Hey guys, welcome to Builder Funnel Radio. This is episode number 32 with Michael Stone of Markup and Profit. And that's exactly what we talk about today. We talk about profit, we talk about job costing, we talk about estimating, and how important it is to do some of those things early in the process to make sure you have a healthy net profit and a sustainable construction business. So I think you'll get a lot out of this, and stay tuned for episode number 32 with Michael Stone. Hey, Michael, glad to have you on the show today.
Hi, Spencer. Thank you for inviting us. We really appreciate it. I hope we can help here.
Yeah, I'm excited. And, before we jump into the world of estimating today, I'd love for you to kind of share a little bit of your backstory and, how'd you get into the world of construction?
It was kind of a forced entry thing. My father had a large construction company in southwestern North Dakota, and this was back in the mid-50s. And at that time, when you were, if you were a young male and you were in grade school or high school and your father had a business, you worked for him, period, in the conversation. So, yeah, I got involved with him, and, I started out sweeping floors and fussing around, cleaning the shop and cleaning trucks out. And it was a large electrical and HVAC company. And so I started doing all the cleaning, and, I started going out on service calls and other stuff with guys, and just to gradually progress from there from electrical to plumbing work to concrete and siding and roofing and windows and everything else, building houses, you name it. So it's just been kind of I've been at this 58 years now, so it's just been a progression from one step to another. I keep looking for that next step of retirement, but I don't think it's going to be anytime soon.
Yeah, having too much fun.
Oh, I love what I do. You see the families we help, and that's what Devin and I have built our business on, is helping contractors take care of their families. I mean, that's our focus. And when you get a nice note from a guy or a gal, either one, and saying thanks for all the help and we're doing much better. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's actually a pretty good segue into our topic today, which is, estimating and profit. I mean, a big part of making a profit and making sure you're running your business so that you are is on the front end when you actually, quote and estimate the job. So curious to kind of dive into that with you today. And how do you approach estimating?
Well, I've taught estimating in 45 different states, so I'm just a rough guess, roughly 30,000 contractors over the years, and most of them are I love the guys, but they don't organize their thinking process to do estimates. And estimates should be you develop a system, and then you use that system the same way every single time. You never deviate from it. And I found over the years that the guys that do have a good system and stick to it like glue are the ones that have the lowest error factor. And to me, that's when I look at an estimate, the first thing I look at is, all right, this is the estimated amount. This is the actual amount of cost to build the job. What's the error factor? That tells me how good the estimator is. And no yeah buts in there. I mean, it's that number. That's what's important. Okay. Take your estimated amount, subtract from your actual amount, subtract your estimated amount, and the difference divided by the estimated amount is your error factor. That's basically what the math formula is.
Gotcha. And so do you look for certain error factors, or when do you're in a good spot and when do you're in a bad spot?
Oh yeah, it's real easy to tell. If the error factor is under 2%, the guy or lady, is the case may be, know what they're doing. They're organized. They're doing things the way they should, and they will seldom have any problems. Now, there may be problems on the production and other things, but on the estimating things, our numbers are right. And it starts creeping up over 2%. And unfortunately, that applies to most contractors. The error factor gets in most of them are lucky if they can get within 5%. And a good many of them are error factors of 8 and 10% or even higher, which is,
wow.
To me, you're not estimating, then you're guessing.
So, right. Yeah.
And that's
So
not being mean or nasty. That's just the reality of it.
yeah, that's the raw numbers, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can look at an estimate sheet and tell right now whether the estimator knows what they're doing. You look at the numbers. When you start seeing zeros at the end of things, you know they're guessing.
Yeah. So if you see an error factor that's north of 10 or, pretty high, how do you start to course correct, with, moving forward?
Oh, well, if I'm being hired to help the individual, then we sit down and say, right now, let's see you do an estimate. And, I start making notes, and usually I can go about 5 minutes before I go crazy. And so, you know, and the little things like first thing you got to do, you turn your phone off. I don't mean on buzz. I don't mean, have somebody else answer the phone. I mean, you turn the darn phone off. That's a distraction. You don't need that. That's especially the mobile phones,
Mm-hmm.
followed by the landline. That should be turned off. You're going to sit down and do an estimate. You make sure you don't have to go potty, and you make sure you've eaten your lunch or breakfast or whatever it is, so you're not hungry. You sit down. You should have a good set of pictures from the job that you're looked at to do the estimate on. They should be loaded on your computer monitor. And so when you sit down to do your estimate and you pull up your estimating program, you should be able to flip back and forth between the pictures of the job and the estimating program you're using. And this idea, I can remember what you did. You don't remember. The human mind is not capable of remembering all the details on a job they've seen once, maybe twice. You see, that's what I mean about doing the same thing, same way every time. Take a good set of pictures, you get them up on, and like when I'm doing estimating, I have two monitors in front of me, and the one right in front of me has my estimate sheet, and the one off to the right has the pictures, and I just go back and forth and scroll up or down through the pictures, so I don't miss anything. And that'll go a long way. And the other one is our cardinal rule. I believe it's number 6, and that is to get a written quote on anything over $300 on the estimate sheet, and that's from subcontractors or suppliers. Another unwritten rule is that when you figure labor or in-house stuff, if you will, then it's checked by a second person. And that isn't maybe or sometimes, that's every time. And you do that, you'll see your error factor. And that, and using an estimating software program, you'll pull your estimating error factor down into the 2% range real quick. We have a number of coaching clients that have error factors less than 1%, and that's consistent over a year's term. So we know it works.
That's great. Yeah. And I like how you can see the process that you're breaking down, and even just getting down to the basics of turning the distractions off and those sorts of things. When you're dealing with these kinds of numbers, I mean, you can make a simple mistake or an easy mistake, but it can turn into a huge number, at the end of the day.
I know of a case in particular. A friend of mine, he was called back to the Midwest, someplace around Illinois somewhere, and or Indiana. And this guy was losing money on every job he estimated. And so my friend went back and sat down and watched him do an estimate. It took him like 5.5 hours to do the estimate. And so my friend then sat down and he did the estimate. It took him an hour and a half, and it was over a $7,000 job cost difference. And the reason was the other guy that he was trying to help was constantly picking up his phone, trying to talk and dealing with office people and everything else instead of staying focused on what he was doing. And so, when you got a room addition of 60 or 70,000 bucks and you got a $7,000 error on it, that's over 10% right there. And it was all caused, in this particular case, it was caused because the guy was constantly picking up his phone. This is why I say you don't put the phone on buzz, you turn the phones off.
Yeah.
You do that, you're good to go.
Yeah, you'll be in good shape. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly
right. So let's talk about markup, because I think, that's another big piece of making sure we have good profitability. I mean, how do you go about figuring out what the markup should be? I think we hear a lot of industry standards and different approaches, but, what's your approach to that and figuring out for each company how they should decide on that?
Well, the only industry standard for markup is sales price divided by job cost equals the markup that you're using. All right. Now, that isn't necessarily how you calculate it. It's calculated by taking to get to your markup. You take your. I got to stop and think through this. Bear with me here. You take your sales price, subtract your overhead profit, which gives you your job cost. And so then it's just a simple matter of division. I think the thing where a lot of people miss is they think markup is a percentage, and it's not. A markup is simply a number that you use to multiply times your job cost to get to the sales price you need. That number must cover your overhead expenses and your profit. Okay. Now, I have guys tell me, they start fussing and worrying about, well, that number's too big, it's too much, we're not competitive. And those are, you got to put that crap out of your head, because that's what it is. You have an option of being competitive in this business. You do not have an option of being profitable. You're either profitable or you're gone. And so, I tell guys, quit fussing and worry if the number's 1.5, if it's 1.9, if it's 3.6, who cares? If that's what it takes to cover your overhead and profit on top of your job cost, so you have a sales price that you can sell, build a job, pay your overhead, and have a decent 8% net profit, then use it. Quit worrying about what this number in your head. Just forget that stuff. That's got nothing to do with it. The only thing that counts is, do you have enough money in the job to cover your job costs, your overhead, and make a profit besides? If you don't make a profit, you're gone. I mean, that's sixth grade math.
Can't last forever like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a long-winded answer, but essentially, if you got a good profit and loss statement, you can take your total sales, divide it by your cost of goods sold, and that will give you your markup, which is everything below the line.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, and you're looking at your current overhead, and you're looking at, you can essentially decide your profitability. Hey, this is where I'm trying to be, as an 8%, 10, or, you mentioned 8. And then it just becomes a math equation. So I guess, what do you say to those people that maybe they're doing the math and they're saying, okay, this is what it's saying I need to be, selling at, the selling price. And they're saying, hey, it's way too high. Is that just all head trash, or do you sometimes need to dig into overhead and maybe that's a little bit bloated, or, what do you think there?
No, you hit it right on the head. It's head trash. Or garbage, if you want. It's got nothing to do with it. Whatever the number is, that's what you got to use. There's all kinds of contractors that want to argue with that, and there's all kinds of contractors that go broke every year. That's not a coincidence. Okay, this is not rocket science. It's plain basic 6th grade mathematics. You either charge enough for your work, or you're going to go broke.
I love it. Yeah, and I think you get stuck in, I called it head trash, but you can call it a lot of different things. But I think in our minds, everyone's different, but they think a certain number is a certain way. It feels high, it feels low, it feels just right. And, at the end of the day, if you're pricing it at a certain price and it's turning people away, then those maybe aren't your ideal clients. Is that what you think? Or
maybe they're not the ideal customer. But you got to clean up your sales presentation, because in many cases, the best salesperson will get the top dollar for that job, and they can be anywhere from 10 to 30 or 40% more than anybody else. When I was still in sales full time, it was not uncommon for me to get 10 to 20% more for the same job than all the competitors that were quoting it. But I worked really hard at making a good presentation, asking, tons of questions up front. But the other thing is, this is a little bit on the sales issue, is that most contractors are so busy talking and giving all this advice and free design and all this other stuff. And that's not what you should be doing on a sales call. The sales call is where you go out and ask questions, zip this, and listen to the answers. They will tell you everything you need to know to get them from where you are now to a design contract to a final contract for whatever job it is they want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And that was one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, because I see on a lot of guys' websites, click here for a free estimate, call for a free estimate. What are your thoughts on the free estimate?
Free only attracts people who are looking for something for nothing. And that's it. There's a nice way to say it. And you shouldn't have free anywhere in your website. Shouldn't be on your truck. Shouldn't be on any of your printed material. You don't need free. What you need is a good presentation. And if you do that, you don't have to use the word free. Because see, free, essentially, you're an order taker hoping that, this free stuff will get you more work. Well, if you have to get a job from somebody that likes the word free, tell me their whole focus isn't on price, Yeah,
it's a great point. Free attracts that kind of bottom of the barrel, people looking for deals and discounts and
that's right.
Way through. And I would imagine most people aren't in this business to be the lowest cost.
Well, No, and it's really interesting that the really good customers out there, they know and understand that they're going to have to pay a fair price to get the work done. That's how they got their money, because they understand the business cycle. And the people that want cheap prices, low prices, you got to cut your price is too high. Those people don't understand this business. I mean, construction is a cost-based business. Each job must stand on its own. Virtually all other businesses except one are market-based businesses, which you can lower your price on one side, but then that allows you to sell more of everything you have, and of course you make a little higher profit. But construction, you can't do that. Construction, the job has to stand on their own. And so when guys start cutting their prices, they think they're in a market-based business, and they're not. Okay.
I think, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I think that's a really important point that probably a lot of people miss. And yeah, as long as each job stands on its own, then the rest of it is just math, and it's going to work out, and your bottom's going to look like what you want it. Yeah.
Yeah, you won't be quite so quick to cut your markup either if you know that job has to stand on its own, and you ain't going to make it up on the next one, because there might not be a next one.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And typically if you're cutting it, you're not willing to double it on the next one, because that was
no, that's wishful thinking on the part of most of them. They cut the price on this and they'll cut it even more on the next one. First thing you know, they're out of business. I mean, we see that all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about price negotiation, because it sounds like, we talked about not doing free estimates, but I'm sure, you run into those customers. They love to negotiate. They love to get the deal. How do you recommend people handle that, when you come in and say, hey, this is what it's going to cost?
Well, again, now this goes back to, this isn't something you can just tell them one time and expect to have it hit. You have to use this in your sales presentation. And that's normally in the first 30 minutes. I mean, you have to emphasize to them that the sales price of their job is going to be directly related to the design they want, and the selections they make of the materials and other things that go into the job, or the design that they've come up with. So their selection of the design, or their selection list and their design of the job, is what determine the price of the job, not me. So when I'm done and they say, well, we want to negotiate price, and I say, do you want a price? Do you want to negotiate price? Okay, fine, we're willing to do that. Do you want to go up or down? You want to go down? Okay, what do you want to take out of the job? Now you want to negotiate? Let's negotiate. What do you want to take out of your job to get the price down where you think it's right? Now, if you want the price to go up, what do you ask me? You want me for some more stuff? You tell me. Okay.
I
used to have I can't remember just exactly how I did it, but when people start saying, boy, I think your price is a little high, and I say, let me check my price. Oh, you're right. My price isn't too high. It's too low. I made a mistake. We're going to add about $500 to this job. And I'm just ornery enough, when I was out selling, I'd do that. And it was amazing how fast that negotiating stuff went away. Yeah. I probably lost some jobs because of it, but I didn't care. I don't want that kind of business, because if they're nickel diming you up front, they're going to, diamond quarter you all the way through the job. And it's just not worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like
hair. This isn't this isn't dyed this color. This came from a lot of sales calls.
That wasn't left over from Halloween.
No. No. Oh boy.
Yeah. I like it.
It's been a long road, but it's been fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I like that, because you have to be able to stand behind your price and say, hey, this is what it is. If you want to work with us, this is the quality work we're going to do. This is what it is.
Yeah. In our, we do our 2-day class, and we got one next week in Ontario, California, and we talk about stuff, and guys start talking. Oh, but they're my relatives, they're my friends, and I have one saying that I use virtually every class: you want a friend? Go buy a dog. You're in business to provide a service and make a profit doing it. Stick with that. Forget this friend stuff. And, the guys that listen to that, all of a sudden it changes their whole attitude about how they're dealing with customers.
Yeah. Well, and I think along that sentiment, profit is such an important part. It's a critical part of business. I would imagine, though, you bump into a lot of guys that give excuses like this. And, so I guess what are kind of the top complaints that you hear when somebody wants to cut a deal for a friend or whoever? What are some other things that people say, and then how do you respond to that?
In regard to the price?
in regard to making a profit, because I think sometimes, people get into it for the work, the craft, whatever it is, and then you build it and it's your business, and they start figuring that out, that it's not just a hobby or for fun. But sometimes people have a negative connotation with profit, and that's greedy or bad. So I'm kind of curious to hear what
Oh,
kind of.
are you referring to all the stuff that the kids in school are being taught now by these so-called knowledgeable teachers? Yeah,
Yes, I
right.
am. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and well, I don't want to bash the teachers because they do, for most part, they do a good job. But they're, the idea, and this has been perpetrated literally across the country, that profits are bad. Well, you take the profits away from these companies, there's going to be a whole bunch of businesses failing. I mean, you either make a profit or you're gone. I mean, that's the bottom line. And when people start wanting to argue about profit, well, I think your price is too high, stuff like that. Most of those things can be cured with a proper sales presentation. I wrote a book called Profitable Sales: A Contractor's Guide, and then I talk about asking. There's 4 basic questions you ask, and that is, what do you want to do? When do you want to do it? Who's going to make the buying decision, and what's their criteria for picking their contractor, and the budget for your job. Now, when you go through those 4 questions and you get the answers, especially number 2, which is when do you want to start, and number 4, which is what is your budget for your job, you get the answers to those questions, you're well on your way to getting a contract, because you're eliminating all those objections and those uncertainties, and you're building trust with your customer, if you will. And if you make your presentation correctly, when you get to the point where you say, all right, now, all right, you want to be, you got this kitchen remodel, you want to do it, or you realize you're going to be somewhere in, let's just say, 75 to 80,000 range. Does that suit your family budget? And they say, well, yeah, that's about what we thought. Good. Let me tell you how we work from here. And you reach in your briefcase, pull out your design agreement, and get to work on that. Now you've taken them step by step right through it. And the design agreement is a small yes to get to the big yes, which is the contract for the job. But everybody wants to get in a hurry and start throwing numbers around and everything else. Just take a breath, slow down. Take it one step at a time. If you can get a whole bunch of little yeses, and that's what Big Zig Ziglar used to teach all the time, you get a whole bunch of little yeses, so when it comes time for the big yes, it's very easy to get it from them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of people are making that shift to the design agreement. I'm curious, what what do you say when you ask that customer and they say, what's your budget? And they say, well, I just don't know what this stuff costs, so that's why I'm coming to you.
Just say, I don't know what it costs either, but that's not what I asked. What I asked was, what is your budget? Share with me what you would like to invest in your project right here. Okay. Because I don't know what's going to cost. You don't know what's got. Nobody knows what it's going to cost, because we don't know what's inside your head yet, what your design is. So let's get this cost stuff out of the way here, and let's talk about setting your budget, because that's what we designed the job to. Remember I said earlier, we're going to talk about we're going to talk about your design. We're going to talk about the materials and stuff you want to put into this job, and that's what's going to determine the sales price. All right. So what I'm asking you to do, let's turn that around. Let's start with the sales price, and let's work it backwards, so we know what we can include in your design and what materials that we can fit into that design, so that you get what you want. Why waste all this time with drawing plans and doing estimates, and its price is too high, and we got to draw more plans and more estimates? That's a waste of time. Okay. I mean, I don't know of any good contractor that follows that approach anymore. That's all, we're going to set the budget, and we're going to design to the budget, and we're going to move ahead with the project. And the people, especially the home and building owners, and even architects, if you will, if they're smart, they pull in the contractor right up front. They all work to one thing: getting the design and the selections made, and the design fits the customer's budget. And by doing that, the job gets done for less money, because a contractor doesn't have to invest all this extra time. Home and building owners are getting charged for it. They don't even realize it. When a contractor has to do 3 or 4 estimates, somebody's got to pay for that. Okay. So,
Yeah.
the better the approach that the contractor uses, the less expensive the job will be. But you can't expect the homeowner to know this stuff. You got to study, and you got to learn a good process of asking questions, and what questions to ask, and how they relate to each other, and how you got to recognize the customer's personality and what's important to them, and just kind of blend all this stuff together. Good salespeople do that, and they make good money.
Yeah.
As do
Yeah.
the companies.
Yeah, I love how you flip that around, and there's always objections and there's different ways to just, walk them through the process and
Yeah.
reposition the conversation
Yeah.
so that you can get to where you want to go.
Yeah. You get, how can I get them to dotted line?
Line on the line. Yeah.
You better believe it. That's it.
Cool.
And that's not being dishonest or a subterfuge or anything else. That's just doing a darn good job of helping the customer get their wants and needs met. That's what good salesmanship is.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And shifting gears a little bit, I want to talk about contractors and getting paid. I think a lot of people maybe, they don't keep people on a payment schedule and then they get behind and suddenly it creates some cash flow problems. And do you see that come up a lot? And how do you recommend, diagnosing that that's happening and then course correcting?
Okay, and I'll just kind of ad lib this because it all ties together. First thing is that most contractors, and bless their hearts, I love every one of them, they haven't taken the time to study and find out what a good payment schedule is. It is not 1/3 down, 1/3, 1/3, or half, fourth, and fourth, or any of the rest of that nonsense, because those payment schedules have the contractor paying for the job out of his own pocket. The ideal payment schedule, regardless of what state you're in, and even this applies to California because it works down there if it's used right, and that is a down payment, and then a down payment, and then a progress payment on the first Friday of the job, and then a payment every other Friday after that. And please, let's not hear anything from these guys doing commercial work or the great big housing or they're going through the bank or anything that you can't get that. Yes, you can. If you set the process up correctly, you can get paid every other week. I've got contractors across the nation as coaching clients that know how to do it, and it works very well. Now, you set up your payment schedule, which is a down payment. Now, say in California, where you're limited to either $1,000 or 10% of the sales price, whichever is the least, then you get a material purchase fee up front, okay? And you can get a job initialization fee. Now you got 3 checks before the job starts right there. So, I mean, there's always a way, there's always a workaround, and there's nothing illegal about it, right? But you get your down payment, your first payment on the first Friday of the job, and then your succeeding checks after that every other Friday should be an even amount. In other words, your say, as an example, you have a contract for $55,993. Well, your down payment should be some amount with $993 on it. So if you have 8 more payments after that, you break that up into 8 equal payments, so the customer always knows from one step to the next exactly how much it was, because it's the same as it was 2 weeks ago. Okay. Now you get down to the last 2 payments. Okay, I'm sorry, down to the last 2 payments. The last 2 payments equal any one of the ones above that, because your final payment should never be more than 2% of the sales price of the job. So you take, say, one of your progress payments is $8,500. Your last payment was I don't know, $55,000. So it's 2 and 5 is $1,000. Your last payment was $55,000. So your second to last payment is $4,500. Your last payment's $1,000. Total $5,500, which matches all the other progress payments up above it. If you follow that, what you're going to find is you take away this idea that the customer has this big club to beat you over the head to get a whole bunch of stuff at the end of the job. That because they owe you this big amount of money, you're afraid to argue with them. They don't pay you. You take that all out of the equation there. It's just it's not that hard to do. And if your final payment's 2% and the customer gives you any crap about it, then you just say, hey, just keep your final payment. We're done. We're out of here. And by the way, there's no guarantee on this job. Okay. So if you've estimated your job right, you've covered your overhead with your markup, and you're making it 8% profit as you should. Your last 2% is only 2 of the 8%. So now you walk out of there with a 6% net profit. That's more than most guys make on their jobs. So you're good to go. So you can't lose on it.
Yeah,
it's all in a matter of knowing how to set this thing up and make it work. And I know you'll probably get calls from guys saying, "Oh, you can't do that. Bank won't allow it." You don't let the bank allow it. Okay, you want to remember your contract is with the home or building owner, not with the bank.
Okay? I love it. Yeah,
you don't let the banks tell you how to charge for your job. You work it out with the home or building owner. This is how we're going to be paid. Now you take it to the bank and figure it out from there. I don't care. Okay.
I like it.
Yeah, and you get guys say, "Well, they won't lend me any money." Give it to the homeowner. Why should you work out of your pocket? That's what they're telling you. I
Right.
mean, these lenders, I mean, left to their own devices, they'll have the contractor financing 100% of the job and waiting 6 months to pay them after the job's done to make sure this bank still doesn't have any liability. I mean, we see it all the time. So, you just say, this is our payment schedule, this is what we expect, and let the homeowner go fight the battle with the bank, because the home or building owner is king to the banker, where the contractor is kind of a little bit less than way down the scale as far as what they think.
Yeah.
You got to take control of those things. You can't just say, well, the industry standard. There is no industry standard in construction I can't think of an industry standard in construction other than a 2x4, and it's not 2x4, not anymore. It's 1 5/8 by 3 5/8 of some, and that even is starting to vary a little bit now. I've noticed measuring some stuff. So
Yeah. I like it. You've got to set those processes up and execute on them and stand by them, because that puts you in a good financial spot. And as you were going through that, you've mentioned a couple of times, the 8% profit. I'm just curious where that number came from. Why not 6 or 10 or 12?
Over the years, we've been coaching now since, let's just say roughly 2000. Okay. So we've been at about 18 years, and I have found over the years that our coaching clients that maintain 8% net profit seem to have very few, if any, financial problems. And so that's where it came from. It's a real simple formula.
That's awesome.
If it's working just about without exception across the board for the contractors, and not just locally, we have clients in 40 countries around the world for our stuff. And, we don't get a lot of feedback from foreign countries, but we get enough that I can tell that they have the same problems we do here in the US and Canada. And, those that have the 8% net profit seem to be doing pretty well. So that's what I tell. That should be your minimum. Okay.
Cool. Yeah. And just out of curiosity, what's the highest profit you've seen that somebody can actually sustain over, multiple years and they're still not causing other problems elsewhere, like trying to run too lean?
Well, short of, a downturn like we had in December 2008 and January 2009, which was the bottom of the last downturn, generally, it's not uncommon for us to see contractors in the 12 to 14, 15% net profit range. I've seen a number of them that have exceptional years where they'll make 30% net profit. Not happen a lot, but it does happen. 20% is reasonably common, but in the 10 to 12% is probably where most of the good contractors fall. If you're much under 8%, then you got some work to do, and the sooner the better. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, hey, Michael, I have one last question for you, but before I get to that, how can our listeners get in touch with you, find you online? What's the best way to connect with you?
Okay, website, markupandprofit.com. Okay, all one word. My email is michael@markupandprofit.com. Phone number is 360-335-1100. And nothing else, just type in Markup and Prof on a website and we'll pop up. I mean, we always end up in the top 15 or 20 spots, but that is not that we're so much better than anybody else. It's just that nobody else has that kind of label or tag. So we will fill in, we fill in the last letter. Okay. You had one more question or not you had one, but we had one more thing that we talked about, and what is my feeling on free estimates? And, I don't believe in we did talk about free. I don't believe in giving out free estimates, but if you follow the design agreement process, where you go out, ask your questions, get the answers, tell the folks we're going to design to your budget, you set up the design agreement where you do the design work, you do the estimate, you write the contract, and you bring it back and lay it in front of them for their review. Now you're getting paid to do all that. So that's kind of how I answer that question. You should be paid for that. That's reasonable.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And that's awesome. And my final question for today is just, if you could leave our listeners with one piece of advice, what would you say to them?
Want a friend? Go buy a dog. You got to remember, you're in business to provide a service and make a profit doing it. You know, you're not in business to be a mechanic. You're not in business to show everybody how much you can build and how fast you can build it. You know, you're not in business to buy a new fancy truck every year. You're not in business to employ your friends or relatives. You're in business to provide a service and make a profit doing it, and stay focused on that, and set everything else aside. If you do that, you'll be able to take care of your families. That's the bottom line. Okay, the families, your kids. You know, it's. I don't know. I cannot remember the last time I met an individual, a male, that didn't want to take care of his wife and kids. And I know they're out there, but I can't remember the last time I ran across somebody like that. So if you follow some basic principles, you will be able to take care of your family. You know, buy your kids the toys and education they want, and the clothes they want, and the food they want, and your wife has nice clothes, or her husband has nice clothes, and you drive a decent car. It doesn't have to be a new car. It just, you know, but you provide a service, make a profit doing it, you'll be okay.
Well said. Well said. Well, Michael, thank you so much for joining me today. This was awesome.
Yeah, anytime. Glad to do it.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed episode number 32 with Michael Stone. I know you're driving around, or maybe you're at the gym, you're listening to this on the go, and so I like to boil it down into action items. So let's look at 2 action items that I saw come out of today's episode, although there was a lot of great stuff. So number 1, let's look at what your margin of error is on your estimating. So Michael talked about that at the beginning of the episode as kind of a target of 2%, but go back and look at a few past jobs and see what that actually was. So that's step 1. Step 2 is go ahead and use Michael's process of tuning out distractions, you know, shut the door, turn off your phone, all your notifications, and really put your head into that next estimate. Then rerun the numbers and see what your margin of error is. And I bet it's going to be significantly improved. So I think if you take those 2 steps, you'll get a ton of value out of this episode. And guys, if you are getting some value out of Builder Funnel Radio, either this episode or some previous episodes, we'd really appreciate a review on iTunes. It helps us reach more construction professionals and get the word out. So again, head on over to iTunes, or maybe you're just in your app right now. Click us a review. We really appreciate it. And we'll see you next time on Builder Funnel Radio.